Her 18th birthday, her dad called to wish her a happy birthday, and before Deedee would even let Gypsy get on the phone, she told him that you are not allowed to tell her she's 18. So today we're going to be talking about the story of Gypsy Rose and Gypsy Blanchard, and this happened back in summer of 2015. These two are Hurricane Katrina survivors. She did not have a job and instead was her daughter's full-time caregiver because Gypsy had a ton of medical conditions. She also had leukemia and muscular dystrophy. She even had an oxygen tank she had to carry around. Gypsy was always going to be immature for her age. It was possible that she may even die at an early age. And according to Deedee, she had a very abusive family back at home. That's why she left them. Apparently she'd gone through a ton of abuse with her family. And Gypsy's father, they got married because they were having a baby, and he realized he wasn't in love with her anymore, and they separated. He was extremely abusive, had wanted nothing to do with Gypsy, and was just a terrible, terrible guy. And all was fine until June 14th of 2015, when this status was posted to Deedee and Gypsy's shared Facebook wall. Of course, people freaked out. Like, what? So neighbors and family were obviously panicked. They called police. So they gathered outside of her house, and what neighbors thought was super weird is that Gypsy's special car that was for her wheelchair was in the driveway. And they did find Deedee in the house, in her bedroom, and she had been brutally to death. By the time they found her, she'd already been dead for a couple days, and Gypsy was nowhere to be found. So neighbors instantly thought this has got to be an intruder that came in, killed Deedee, and took Gypsy's kid. So obviously one of the first things that the police would do in this situation is trace the Facebook post. And when they traced the IP address, it came back to a man named Nicholas Gojon. So after the police did a little bit of digging, they interviewed some people, and they talked to someone that Gypsy was, I guess, friends with, more of like a mentor figure for her. Gypsy actually confided in her and told her that she had a boyfriend. His name was Nick, and she was in love with him. They met on a Christian dating site. This guy was very, very heavily involved in her life, and they talked a lot. So obviously the first thing they do is contact them. They go to the house, and he surrendered right away and confessed to killing Gypsy Blanchard.
I did actually.
And Gypsy was there with him at his house. She had taken the bus to his house. They had taken a Greyhound, and what was really shocking to everyone is that Gypsy walked out of that house just fine. She walked like she'd been walking all her life. She didn't have any of her medical supplies with her, or her wheelchair or anything. She had completely gotten there on her own. Volunteers and family and friends were shocked. The police quickly made this announcement.
Things are not always as they appear.
People realized that she had short, spiky hair. She was not bald from her cancer treatments. This entire story of Gypsy being sick and handicapped all her life with leukemia and muscular dystrophy and seizures, epilepsy, all these things, was a complete lie constructed by Gypsy Blanchard. If you've never heard of something called Munchausen syndrome, it is a mental disorder, and it is when someone will fake medical issues on themselves. They will fake injuries or fake a disease or think that they're constantly sick when they're not. And normally the point of this is to get money or attention, or, you know, who knows? People have different motives. But this was a case of Munchausen by proxy, which is when someone makes someone else lie about being sick. And when Gypsy was arrested, she told the police everything. She was not mentally disabled whatsoever. She had a completely normal brain for her age. Gypsy told the police when she was arrested that she was only 19, and it wasn't because she was lying. She really thought she was 19. In reality, she was actually 23. And that's where the lies get even deeper, is that Deedee made up the whole story about Gypsy's dad being this abusive, horrible guy. He's actually a really good guy, and he wanted to be involved more in his daughter's life, but Deedee was very angry at him, was very protective, did not let him come around at all, and she definitely wouldn't let Gypsy go there because she's so sick that she can't possibly have Rod take care of her. On her 18th birthday, her dad called to wish her a happy birthday, and before Deedee would even let Gypsy get on the phone, she told him that you are not allowed to tell her she's 18. Deedee had conned multiple people in multiple states. She had conned charities in the past. Her legal name was Claudine Blanchard, and she actually added that E at the end of Blanchard, and she had forced Gypsy to fake all of this. It was actually to the point where Gypsy thought she really was sick. She thought she did have leukemia. And this all started when she was a kid. And what blows my mind is how no doctors figured out that this woman was making all of this up. I hope they do a lot of investigation into the doctors that they saw, because, I mean, maybe she's just a really good liar, but at the end of the day, how do you not back up treatments that you give someone with actual medical data? You know, that's pretty bizarre. And something interesting about Deedee is she actually used to work as a nurse's assistant, and she was pretty smart. I mean, you gotta be pretty smart to pull off an elaborate scheme like this, but she knew a lot of like medical terminology and was able to keep up with the doctors, or when people asked questions, she was able to quickly tell them something that was a little like over their head medically, and they would just be like, oh, okay, whatever, and you know, let it go. And according to her family, her mother was actually, when she was in her old age, Deedee was taking care of her and secretly was starving her mother, starved her to death. Her family hated her. None of them are close with her. Most of them said that they were happy when she died, or they didn't care. A lot of people, I'm sure, are sitting out there right now listening to this and being like, well, why didn't she tell anybody, like, yo, I don't even feel sick? Well, her mom, first of all, physically hit her, and she was also told by her mom all the time that like people won't take you seriously, people won't believe you. And she also thought that since she was told to everyone that she had brain damage and was mentally slow, that no one would believe her and think she was making the whole thing up, or no one would take her seriously. The one thing that she did know is that she could walk. She even had a muscle biopsy where they proved that she didn't have muscular dystrophy, and no one said anything. No one did anything. Imagine how differently things would have shook out if someone said anything, just questioned anything about this very bizarre case. All the medication she was on. I mean, that's almost the worst part about this for me, is that she was by her mother over and over again. As investigators looked into this a little more and they started, you know, interviewing the two of them, at first Gypsy denied a lot of it, said that she wasn't involved with anything. It turns out Gypsy did ask that Nick had to murder her mother, that was the only way she could escape. And once they got Nick's family in there, who had no idea that this had gone on, were extremely shocked, especially with the fact, okay, Gypsy and Nick mailed the knife to his house, like through the mail. Like straight up put it in a manila envelope and sent it off. But they did find out that Nick has autism. And I am very familiar with autism. I actually have someone with autism in my family. And for those of you guys who didn't know, I was gonna be a teacher and I had to take some classes on special education. And I actually worked with special needs kids in middle school for 3 years. So I wasn't doing any expert work, but I spent time with them through this program my school had. And I worked one-on-one with this kid with autism. So I'm very familiar with the different levels of it, all the way from Asperger's to Rett syndrome, and I understand the obsession that kids with autism can have, that they can get so set on something that they may not see reality clearly. And he was very set on being with Gypsy. The craziest part of this though is that Facebook status that was so violent was actually written by Gypsy. She did not commit the murder herself. She was sitting in another room while Nick did it. So it's kind of a difficult situation, right? You have this girl who's been her whole life, you know, robbed of an education. Think that she was only educated up to about a kindergarten level. I mean, it's crazy. And then you have the killer who has autism. She did, you know, plead guilty and was very honest, and for the first time in her life she could be honest. And so many of the things that she was lying about, she didn't even know she was lying about. So in court, her lawyers obviously used Munchausen by proxy and as the reason why Gypsy did this, and she was actually only sentenced to 10 years. She actually says she's much happier being in jail than she ever was at her home. She's actually living a better life now, according to her, and she will be able to get out in her 30s. At least she'll be able to live some of her life, but how normal of a life can you have after this has all happened to you? Her dad is now very involved with her, her stepmom. They visit her often. They're getting closer, rebuilding their relationship after all these years of deception.
I take blame on myself and I blame other people, but I never once blame y'all.
You know, I wish good things for Gypsy. I really hope that she gets her life together after she gets out of jail and this doesn't ruin the rest of her life. That's it for me today, guys. But I hope you guys are having a good day, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.